Hey everyone, Rick here, back again with another social media showdown for Battlefields of Mana. We have 4 YouTubers left, Lunar Knights, 2 Regal Guard Facebookers. So we're gonna end up doing probably 2 more social media matchups, and that'll leave 2 YouTubers to face off against each other in kind of a Civil War style fashion, which is perfectly fine. Before we get into that though, can I just say thank you to everyone who on my main channel provided names for the Battlefields of Mana provinces. I just made this map today. It looks pretty nice. The other map I had done was a very basic looking situation, but there's the list of all the names that I ended up choosing. I had over 60 submissions. Of course, I only needed 39, so unfortunately some did not get picked, but I tried to at least pick one from everybody. But yeah, so look at these cards. Oh my gosh. They turned out just so perfectly. So these are all the names that people gave me for different provinces in the Battlefields of Mana campaign map. And of course, the numbers on the card correspond to the number of the province. So, yep, absolutely love it. It turned out so well. These cards and this map. Just look how gorgeous that map is. Anyway, alright, so here we go, folks. And we are on the Battlefields of Mana channel now for this one and for the rest of these. Don't mind that bush light in the background. Okay, so here we go. We have Brett and Aaron. Who's it gonna be? Going up against someone from YouTube, but these are the Facebookers. Who is it? Who is it this time? It is Brett! Oh, I cannot wait to play this army. I told Brett when he submitted this that this is going to be one of my favorite armies to play. It is a unit of mounted archers. We've already seen through the first 2 battles how effective mounted archers have been, but 3 flail bearers. I don't think we've seen a single unit of flail bearers yet. Flail bearers are one of my absolute favorites just because of the handfuls of dice, and he picked 3 of them, so it's a 4-unit army. Oh my gosh, let's find out now which army of the YouTubers Brett is going to be going up against. It's going to be Big D for representing the Lunar Knights, 2 units of archers, 2 units of crossbows, light cavalry, and mounted militia. Oh my gosh. I remember when I read this one, I was going to be very interested to see how this would turn out because that's a whole lot of artillery. And if you recall, what was it? I think it was the first battle. Artillery played such a, ranged units played such a big role. But I'm not going to spoil anything, but the first 2 matchups both came down to the final turn, the final combat of the last round of the game. Will this one follow suit? We will see, but we are going to get these armies. We are going to roll off to see who goes first, deploys first, gets to pick which side of the battlefield they want, and we'll be back after deployment. Okay, folks, we are back after deployment. This was one of the most bizarre deployments, especially just because of all these ranged units for Big D. Now, Brett, very straightforward. See, I'm kind of anxious to see, because I know Brett is a super intelligent guy. I'm almost intimidated to play an army of his design, based on the fact that I'm sure he'd play it much differently than I would, but having said that, here's what I ended up going with. Now, Brett won the role to pick a side. I had Brett choose this side because I doubt we want these archers and stuff over here to get into the woods and be able to shoot out of the woods. So we will have the cover bonus for being, getting shot at through the woods. We really don't like the fact that we're going first because we're moving up and then they can sit back and shoot at us as we move at them. But that being said, what are our goals here? Well, since we have 3 flailbearer units, we're just going to rush them up, get involved wherever we can, and just smack face, essentially, and have our mounted archers run around, you know, hitting people in the flanks and whatnot. We can lose the back rank of these flail bearers, no problem. It's not going to affect our attack dice, and the massive amounts of attack dice is what the flail bearers go for. So we have 2 units here that can just shoot up the middle, and we have a unit over here. I was going to stick them over here so they wouldn't be hindered by the woods, but I thought, no, let's use the woods to our advantage. The flail bearers aren't the slowest foot unit, so they can get through here, and you know, if it takes them a little while to get through the woods to the other side, that's not a big deal, because we'll be getting cover saves all the while we're getting shot at. So since we only had 4 units, we finished deploying, and Big D still had half of the army left to deploy, so we didn't get to fully see how Big D was deploying. What we did see, though, is Big D stuck that unit of light cavalry right there. That's going to be the most dangerous melee unit that Big D has. And then, of course, the only other unit are those mounted militia over there. So, similarly, they have a dwelling here, crossbowmen there to move up and kind of shoot through this gap, mounted militia to kind of protect them from anything that comes at them, or maybe they can swing around to the outside there. Light cavalry to shoot up straight in the middle, and then just a wall of archers, just crossbows, archers, whatever is coming through the woods. They will just be shooting volleys and volleys and volleys. This is going to be pretty insane. But as usual, we will be back at the end of round 1. Okay, folks, thus ends round 1, and we've already got some bloodshed here, folks. So, on Brett's Regal Guard turn, the mounted archers, I originally deployed them to move them up into the woods and sit there and shoot, but I thought, you know what, they are the only unit in the game that can actually get shots off on the first round of combat, just because of how fast they are. Even with the woods in the way, they were able to get out of the woods and still take shots at the light cavalry back when they were over here, and they took a chunk out of them, doing 3 wounds. Now, of course, being that far ahead meant when it was Big D's turn, Big D shot the light cavalry straight up. Light cavalry took a risk doing that because, you know, the mounted archers got a free volley off, but that actually didn't do any wounds. Then in close combat, the light cavalry did kill off 1 mounted archer. Mounted archers didn't do anything in melee, back to the light cav, so that's the way that sits. Otherwise, Brett moved up both of those units of flail bearers. One's getting nicked by that dwelling a little bit, so this one will have to keep moving it. More than likely what's going to happen is it's going to go right into the flank of these light cav, and it'll give this other unit a little room to shuffle over and continue moving up this way. As you can see, Big D's up to something over here. Big D left their crossbowmen there. They figure, we don't need to get them any closer into trouble. You know, these other flail bearers have nothing else to do potentially, so we'll see what they end up doing. But Big D thought maybe we'll leave the crossbows there for a sec. If the flail bearers don't end up going that way, if they end up reforming and going around to see these mounted militia over here, then maybe the crossbowmen will start to move in this way. It's going to be troublesome no matter what happens, because if those crossbowmen move into this gap, when this unit of flail bearers closes on the flank of these light cav, they're going to be exposing their flank and or rear to those crossbows. Unless these flail bearers don't bite the bait and go up and fight those mounted militia and continue on over here. But of course, those mounted militia could flip around at any moment and come back to grab the flail bearers. I mean, it's like a chess match. Who's going to flank who? What's going to happen? We'll see next turn. Other than that, we did move these flail bearers into the woods. Maybe not a bad idea. They did take a wound, but look at this. Big D moved this entire line straight ahead. Crossbowmen not yet in range, but both of these archers were in range of these flail bearers, just barely. But doing so, being in the woods, gave the flail bearers the defensive edge. They only took a wound from 12 shots. those flail bears still have a ways to go to get out of the woods. Oh boy, we'll see what ends up happening. I mean, it's insane already, and now we are moving into turn 2. So at this point, we will come back with after action reports after each player's turn. So we'll be back after Brett's turn 2. Oh boy. So this is the end of Brett and the Regal Guards turn 2, and as you can see, there's not a whole lot left of that light cavalry. I may have misplayed them. You know, I thought shooting them straight up at the mounted archers just to get the mounted archers out of there, because we got up there, we were able to fight them. But, you know, the light cavalry is the strongest melee unit left in the game. Now, obviously, Big D is far from over with all these ranged units. I can't wait to see what they're just going to let loose on their next turn. But, man, that light cav unit. So what ended up happening was flail bearers into the flank. Once a unit is outnumbered, you know, the friendly unit can break away without even having to roll for it. And if you saw the last battle where people kept getting stuck in close combats and couldn't break away, especially against light cavalry, because light cavalry had such a high initiative, but that initiative is negated when they're outnumbered. So the mounted archers were able to back up back into the woods. They are in the woods now. They got shots off on the light cavalry, which took out a chunk. And then, of course, the flail bearers, with all their handfuls of dice, took out a chunk. The poor light cav in response didn't do a damn thing. These flail bearers decided to move up and wheel this way. So the ball is now in Big D's court. If Big D wants to shoot with the crossbows have to move up. Brett made sure that these flail bearers were not in a position to get shot at unless those crossbows decide to move. And then, of course, they'll get a penalty for moving and shooting if that's the case. And then now, do these mounted militia turn and come back in this way, or do they keep going around that way? We'll see it in D's turn, but more than likely they're going to keep going around this way because those mounted militia want nothing to do with the flail bearers in their front arc. So then these flail bearers moved up as far as they could, which is to the very tippy top of the forest, so they're still going to get protection from the forest, and the next turn they can move up and do whatever they want. But look at all of that. Holy smokes. Hopefully the woods provide enough cover against what amounts to be 18 shots. That's absolutely insanity. Oh, it is bloody fast in this one, folks. Okay. I'll be back at the end of Big D's turn 2. Okay, the skies were darkened with the sheer volley of arrows. So here's what happened. The light cavalry managed to break away successfully and ran and hid behind this dwelling. Mounted militia continued their march across over here. These crossbows got an unbelievably good attack roll, unfortunately, and did 5 wounds to that unit of flail bearers. Not enough to cut them in half yet, but over here, these flail bearers were cut in half. 6 shots from the crossbows, all +1. 6 shots from those archers, unmodified. 6 shots from those archers, unmodified. That's 18 shots, 6 of which were all +1 at that single unit. The woods did save them, but they are now cut in half. So it's a point apiece. A point for Brett for cutting them in half. A point for Big D for cutting them in half. Brett has survived the first volley, but oh my gosh, that's just so many shots. That's freaking insane. All right, we will be back. Round 2's over. We'll be back at the end of Brett's turn 3. All right, folks, Brett's turn 3. Oh my goodness. So, mounted archers wheeled and are moving through the forest, took shots at this unit of archers, doing 3 wounds. Flail bearers here from the woods moved into contact with the archers. That's where they are. I think they were already cut in half, so they didn't take any wounds from the free volley shots. These flail bearers moved up this way, and we'll see where they decide to go. These flail bearers moved up into those crossbowmen. They did take some wounds from free volley shots, so they are now cut in half. These these light cav obviously see a target there. Do they want to risk moving into contact there, though, is the question. But we'll see what ends up happening. That is it. They moved up, moved up, moved up. Free volley shots, and then shots into those archers there. Lots and lots of shots. We'll be back after Big D's turn 3. Okay, folks, it is the halfway point of the game. Round 3 is over. We're moving into the top of round 4. But let's recap the end of round 3 with Big D's turn 3. And it was a big turn 3, unfortunately. These crossbowmen failed to break away, so they are bracing themselves. However, these archers reformed, these archers reformed. Both units of archers shot into the flank of those flail bearers, whittling them down to just a banner bearer, unfortunately. Mounted militia had the exact amount of movement necessary to, even though moving through the forest, get into the rear of those mounted archers. Over here, light cavalry charged into contact with those flail bearers, which allowed those crossbowmen to back up and fire, killing off all but the banner bearer. In close combat, the light cavalry actually failed to kill off the banner bearer, but the banner bearer of the flail bearers killed off one light cavalry. So now it's a banner bearer on banner bearer action up here, but overall, we're looking not so hot for the Regal Guard right now, with only a banner bearer left on 2 units of flail bearers. That unit of flail bearers is looking good. It's going to be Brett's turn. He's definitely going to be cracking some skulls here, but it's a tough one for sure. We'll have to try to break away with those mounted archers, reform, get some shots in, or get them out of dodge. We're trying to rack up as many points as we can in the second half of the game. We'll be back after Brett's turn 4. Okay, folks, Brett and the Regal Guards turn 4. Those flail bearers. I am just rolling so poorly. The flail bearers had initiative bonus of a +5 to a initiative bonus of a 1 for the crossbows. Of course, I roll a 6 for the crossbows and a 1 for the flail bearers. So the crossbowmen get to go first in close combat. They do a wound to the flail bearers. Flail bearers in return do 4 wounds and almost wipe out the back rank of those crossbows. So that's the highlight. Also, them charging into the flank like that allowed that one flail bearer that was there to hightail it the hell out of there, and he ran into the woods. That's as far as he could get. At least he'll get a dodge roll. He's probably going to take a couple volleys. We'll see if he can survive. In other news, these mounted archers, I rolled poorly in initiative. They failed to not only break away, but also to not even be able to reform to face them head on. So they're bracing themselves. Oh, it was so close. The light cavalry did no wounds to the flail bearer. That one flail bearer only did a single wound to that light cavalry unit. If he could have done one more wound, that light cav would have been eliminated. As is, he has to watch out because those crossbows are going to be firing at him. So we'll see what ends up happening at the end of Big D's turn 4. Okay, folks, the end of round 4. Good news and bad news. Bad news for Big D, even after 6 crossbow shots into that last flail bearer, they only managed to do a single wound. This light cav decided to just brace himself in close combat, so that combat's not going to take place this turn because, you didn't want to risk lose it. Now he gets an extra defense die when those two settle their duel next turn. They each have a wound. Over here, these crossbowmen failed to reform and failed to break away, so they're just bracing themselves. These 2 units of archers reformed, both shot into that last flail bearer. Not a single wound from this unit of archers. And then this unit of archers shot, and it was pretty good. That flail bearer was able to block one of the shots. They got a reroll because they were in the forest. There were just 2 wounds. It was a pair of 5s on 2 dice. If that flail bearer would have just rolled a single 5, he would have still been alive. But unfortunately, he did not roll a single 5 out of the 2 dice, so that flail bearer unit is gone. unbelievably, prior to that, it was a close game. It was only 1-2. Big D had only scored 2 points for having that unit of flail bearers and having that unit of flail bearers. Now, these mounted militia in the flank really ate up the rear of those mounted archers since they couldn't reform. The mounted militia got that +1 to attack bonus for attacking in the flank. And the mounted archers in defense just couldn't do anything. So that unit of mounted archers is now also cut in half. So at this point, we are starting the last third of the game, top of round 5, with Brett and the Regal Guard. All right, folks, a mixed bag at the end of turn 5 for the Regal Guard. Unfortunately, the flail bearer in that duel with the light cavalry has fallen. So the light cav was initiative bonus of a +5, but light cav is base +4, and they have a special ability that gives them a +1 to their initiative when they're going up against non-polearm infantry like the flail bearer. So the light cav got to go first because the flail bearer was an initiative bonus of a +3, so it was a +3 to a +5, but the light cav rolled better. Got to go first and did 1 wound, and that was all the flail bearer had left. I did a test roll just to see what the flail bearer would have done in return. 3 dice, all 1s. 3 1s. So anyway, that flail bearer has fallen. These mounted archers were able to successfully reform and break away. They just shuffled over here. They are at this odd angle where they were still able to get shots in over here. They're still in the woods. And now if these mounted militia want to come at them, it'll be in their flank. I doubt they're going to want to try to reform in the woods and come out here to try to get the rear. So they'll be in the flank, which is initiative bonus, but not an attack bonus. So they did get shots in. They wanted to do some more, cut that unit of archers in half maybe. They did kill off another archer. These flail bearers are just feasting on the crossbows. Did another 4 wounds, but I'm telling you, last turn, they rolled 12 dice. Only 1 6 in 12 dice. And now they rolled 9 dice, not a single 6. And the reason that's important is because the flail bearers, their 6s explode. 12 dice, they only rolled 1 6. In this last turn, they rolled 9 dice, not a single 6. It was a bunch of 4s. Still, they did 4 wounds, but I mean, by now, I just feel it's a little too late. They could be running down here just gobbling up these archers. But that is where it stands. The crossbows did nothing in return. So here we go, moving into the bottom of round 5 with Big D's turn 5. All right, folks, end of Big D's turn 5, thus the end of round 5. Only 1 turn left in the game. Only 1 round, I should say. Light cav fled behind the dwelling. They are safe pretty much for the rest of the game. Crossbowmen turned, shot into the rear of the flail bearers. Even with that attack bonus, still only able to do 2 wounds, so that unit of flail bearers still very much intact. These crossbows again failed to reform, again failed to break away. They're probably going to get just completely eaten up, so they brace themselves. Archers, both shot at the mounted archers. Couldn't do a whole lot. Mounted militia in close combat charged in. Also weren't able to do too much. I mean, that mounted archer unit's still sitting there. So that is where we are at the end of round 5. We will begin with Brett's final turn, turn 6. Okay, folks, that is it for Brett's turn 6. These mounted archers failed to reform, but they did successfully break away, at which point I decided, well, where the hell are they going to go? They could just run off and try to save their points, but I was like, I don't think Brett would appreciate that much. So I actually decided to just leave them there. They didn't get a move and shoot penalty. I decided to have them fire shots into the crossbowmen that used to be there. 2 shots, they both hit a 3 and a 5. The crossbows blocked them both. So unfortunately that was kind of in vain, but at least they're still in the woods. They'll get dodge rolls against these archers if they decide to shoot at them. And then the flail bearers. 9 dice again, only a single 6. So that is, think about that. So that's 12 plus 18. That's a total of 30 dice and only 2 6s. Yeah, 2 6s rolled out of 30 dice. That just does not seem right. So the Flail Bears had an uphill battle the entire time, but they were, through the skin of their teeth, able to do exactly 4 wounds and finally finish off that damn unit of crossbows, despite my poor dice rolling. They reformed this way because those crossbows already get a +1 to their attack dice. If they were shooting in the flank of these Flail Bears, that's a +2. Whereas if these archers want to reform and shoot them in the flank, they'll just be getting a +1. So now everybody would get a +1. Of course, if they do reform, that's a move and shoot penalty anyway, so they wouldn't get a +1. But either way, that is how things are looking, and we'll be back to wrap the entire game up at the end of Big D's turn 6. Alright folks, that is the end of the game, the end of turn 6 for Big D and the Lunar Knights, and the end of round 6 for this game. Oh, good heavens. Alright, so here's what happened. This archer unit reformed, shot into the flank of those Flail Bears, doing a wound. Big D wanted to use that unit, that full unit, into the flank of the Flail Bears, and then these crossbows into the flank of the... hopefully trying to cut that unit in half to get that extra point. These archers did their job. They did a wound. Those crossbows didn't do a single wound. Those Flail Bears... Big D gets no points for those. That unit is just like, what's up? They are ready for more. However, this unit of mounted archers shot into the mounted archers, killing the other mounted archer. It was down to just the banner bearer, the mounted militia in close combat. Actually, the mounted archer banner bearer got to go first in initiative and attacked, but did no wounds. The mounted militia finished off that unit of mounted archers and reformed facing this direction. And don't forget, we still have that lonely little light cav up there. So in the end, here is what Brett and the Regal Guard scored. They scored 1 point for cutting that unit of light cav in half, and 3 points for completely eliminating that unit of crossbows, for a total of 4 points. Now, Big D, 4 points for those Flail Bears, 4 points for those Flail Bears, and 3 points for those Men-at-Arms, and that is a total of 11 points. So it's 11-4. So that's a big difference. What points are still on the table? Well, if Brett could have cut that unit of archers in half, that's an extra point. Kill off that light cav, that's an extra 2 points, so that's 3 points. That'd make it 7-11, but still, that's a lot left. Big D just has their points spread out in these cheaper units, and with fewer units, even as powerful as they are, the fewer units, you know, you only have 6 rounds in a game. With fewer units, trying to wrangle all these weaker units up and taking the turns to eliminate them, the points just don't add up that fast. Now, also it comes down to just incredibly poor luck dice rolling, but you know, there was a lot of shots. I'm just pouring handfuls of shots over and over and over again with this line of ranged attacks, and getting flank bonuses, getting rear attack bonuses. But overall, I mean, just with every game of Battlefields of Man, I had an absolute blast. This is something new. That's why I loved doing these viewer-created armies, just because, you know, these are armies that I wouldn't have thought of. And I still love just pouring out the dice. If there was one weak spot to this Flail Bear heavy army, it was probably this. All these ranged attacks. That was probably the one army type that could deal with them because they, you just sit back and just fire handfuls and handfuls and handfuls. The flail bearers didn't have a lot to block them, no meat shields or anything like that. They just had to take the hits and hopefully still have enough bodies left by the time they got to the ranged attackers. But that is it in the end. Again, it is 11-4 victory for the Lunar Knights. And if you've seen it this far, you've probably watched the other one, so I probably am not spoiling anything to say that this is the first victory for a YouTuber so far out of 3 battles. It was 2 Facebook victories, 1 YouTube victory, and absolutely an absolute blast as always. So, all right, folks, thank you all so much for watching. I do truly appreciate it, and until next time.